A very good morning, everyone. I am Kunal. I am from Document360, one of the co-organizers of this session. We are all thrilled to have you all amongst us this morning. The topic for the day is importance of creating a multilingual knowledge base to serve a global audience. And let me introduce you to the speaker for the day. Our guest speaker is Christina. She is the head of marketing at Crowdin, which is a localization software company. During the last 6 years, she has interviewed dozens of customers and knows the in and out of all multiple localization projects. She is an advocate for great customer service and global products. She is excited by technology, languages, and innovation. In her previous experience, she has also managed a multilingual knowledge base. Today, she will talk to us about why it is important to create a multilingual knowledge base so that you can enable your content to be available or accessible to a wider audience globally. And once she's done with her presentation, we will have our teammate, Dr. Selvaraju Murugesan, Head of Data Science, 𝐭𝐚𝐤𝐞𝐚𝐲𝐬, to talk to you about how Document360 is integrated with Crowdin, and he would also moderate the Q&A. So we will have a conversational Q&A today. I would request the audience to put in your questions in the chat group, and our team will take it and give it to the speaker so that she can address them one by one. Yeah. With these few words, I now pass on the screen to Christina to take over from here. Over to you, Christina.
Yeah, thank you for your introduction and your kind words. Just to add a few words about myself, I have been working in Crowdin for the last 6 years and localization respectively. And I'm happy to do this presentation for you today. And thank you for everyone for joining. And let me take a second to share my screen. I will start the slideshow. If you can, please let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, so today's webinar is on the importance of creating a multilingual knowledge base to serve a global audience. Let's see what is the outline for today. So we have the introductions out of the way already. Then I'm going to speak about the reasons why you should localize your knowledge base. Then we'll go to main translation strategies and teams and how you can ensure consistency in your translated content. Then we'll go to localization software and speak about automating the sync of your source text and translations to avoid copy pasting. Because if you have large amounts of content, if your content is frequently updated, copy pasting files and sending them to translators, then copy pasting translations and adding them to Document360 would be really time consuming. So the best approach here is to automate this process. So we'll talk about that further. And then we'll show a demo of how Crowdin and Document360 integrate together and help you make your knowledge base multilingual in a seamless, fast and efficient manner. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A session. To the next slide. So a few words about Crowdin so you know what it is. So basically Crowdin is a localization software for agile teams and companies that have content that is frequently updated and they frequently release new changes. So if you want to translate a book, you can just have a file with the book content, then you can send it to a translation team, and then you can download translations with software, with knowledge bases, with marketing content and other content in our days of time. It wouldn't work that way because the content is frequently updated and changed. So there is never a final version of your content. That's where Crowdin comes in. We help you translate that content and to avoid any copy pasting or missed translations. So you can track all of that using a software and don't have to worry about that on your own. I will tell a bit more about Crowdin later. So that's the general view. Basically, a few words about the company itself. We have more than 2 million registered users and more than 140 localization projects are hosted on Crowdin. We have some open projects on the platform, so I encourage you to go and check them out. So basically, what kind of content you can translate with Crowdin? You can translate, obviously, your knowledge-based content by integrating with tools like Document360, but your knowledge base can often have some more types of content like screenshots or videos. So, for example, if you host videos on tools like Vistia, you can translate your subtitles. If you have some multilingual screenshots, you can integrate Crowdin with Figma and translate the content on your screenshots and make sure that everything is translated. So Crowdin will help you make your whole company multilingual. We have around more than 500 apps and integrations. They are of two types. Some of them are connectors, like the one we are going to talk about today. And the other ones are add-ons. So you can get some additional features in Crowdin, because we want to make sure that Crowdin UI is simple and it's not overloaded with multiple buttons. So if you need some features added, you can just find one of the add-ons and add it to your account. So a few words about other types of content you can translate. You can also translate your marketing content like emails, surveys, video subtitles, release notes, and other content. You can also translate your e-commerce content. You can connect your store and translate your product descriptions and products and other content on your e-commerce site. You can also connect your development tools. Sorry, these are just a few examples. So you can translate your apps, you can translate your games, you can translate any kind of software. I already mentioned the design tools. You can also connect with different file management and storage tools. And you can connect Crowdin with machine translation tools. So this is one of the translation strategies you can employ. I will talk about translation strategies a bit later, but these are some of the default ones. And you can connect some other tools like Slack to get your translation updates there. Okay, so let's talk about what are the main reasons to localize your knowledge base. Typically, the workflow is companies, they might translate their app or website at first, and then they can expand to translating their knowledge base, or they can translate the knowledge base first to help their support team and then expand to more types of content. So there is no right answer to what kind of content to translate first. So you can translate your knowledge base first, then translate your product. You can translate your product, then your knowledge base, or you can translate them at the same time. So regarding the knowledge base, what are the main benefits? So the first one is that you can reach a global audience and expand into new markets. Very simple reason is that it would be easier to Google or find your articles if they're in the native language of your customers, because they often search in their own language and your articles would pop up faster. And you would be able to reach global audience that doesn't speak the source language of your product if they can consume your content in their language. The second reason is that you can reduce support requests, and thus you can reduce support costs, because your customers would be able to access the articles in their own language and get a quick answer to their questions, and they would be able to use your product faster and understand how they can benefit it. The next reason is that you can improve customer satisfaction, because your customers would be happier to use the product in their own language. You can run NPS, Net Promoter Score surveys, to track that. You can add just a few questions like, are you satisfied with the product you're using? Do you understand the knowledge base articles in the language we provided? Would you like to add some new language? So this way you can find out what languages are missing and what languages you should localize into next. I have added a few numbers to add to the statements on the previous slide. So one of the most interesting for me is that you can reduce you can reduce ticket volume by up to 50% by offering self-service support in multiple languages. Of course, if you translate just 2 articles out of 100 into one language, you don't have it's not a good idea to expect that you would reduce ticket volume by up to 50%. But if it's a big project, you localize a lot of content into multiple language, that is the result you should aim for. The other reason is that If your customers get support in their preferred language, the contact resolution rates from the first touch could be up to 25%. So, for example, if the customer reaches out to the support team and they send them the article not in their native language, they might struggle with that article, they might have difficulties finding the solution on how to use your product. But if the article is in their native language, they would be able to understand how to use the tool faster, and they would resolve their request from the first time. Okay, so it's not all nice because there are always challenges if you want to reach some great goals. So there are also challenges for knowledge-based translation. So the first two and probably the main challenges are large amounts of content and frequently updated content. Let's say you have a knowledge base with 100 of articles. That's already a lot, and you wrote them in one language, but now you want to translate them. It would require you a lot of time and resources because, like the old approach, it would be to download the content, send the files to your translators, then download translated files, and then upload them to your tool. But if you have 100 articles and each of them is translated into 10 of languages, it's a lot of copy pasting, and you definitely don't want to do that. The other thing is frequently updated content. So, for example, if you update your article, you remove some feature or you add a new feature, you want to make sure that your knowledge base reflects that correctly. So you want to update it as well. So tracking those changes manually would be difficult. So you need a tool that would help you with that. So you can manage all the updates and make sure that new articles and new features are represented correctly in all of the languages. The next challenges are technical languages. Technical language requires translators to have expertise in the subject matter. Because if you, for example, have a medical application, it has some medical terminology, your translators will need to be experts in that area so they can translate your content correctly. So you would need to find experts to translate your content. Another reason that is related to this one is a lot of specific terminology. You would need to create a terminology glossary so you can explain some specific and main terms that are most frequently used across your knowledge base articles, so your translators can translate them consistently, and across all the articles the same terminology would be used. And also repetitive content. I'm quite sure that half of your articles, if you have a software, half of your articles would have something similar to go to your account, then click settings. So there is no need to translate that sentence over and over. You can just translate it once and then reuse this translation in all the other upcoming articles. This way you can save your time. There's less content to translate, obviously, and it would also help you save your resources because you would pay less for translations. Okay, so now we know all the challenges, we know all the benefits, and we are ready to localize our content. So where to start? The first step would be to prepare your content for localization. At first, you should review your content. For example, if you have a typo in your sentence, you do not want to translate that typo into 10 languages because you would have 10 typos that way. So it would be a good idea to review your content before translating it and make sure it's ready for translation. So it's the final version, you like it, how it's written, it explains everything in plain language, so it's ready to be translated. And it's a good idea to write new articles in plain language, so it would be easier to translate them. For example, write short sentences. Do not write a sentence that would be a paragraph. It would be difficult to translate it. Try to avoid passive voice because in some languages it could have different meanings and it would be difficult for translators to interpret the source content. And also try avoiding ambiguity and confusion because if it's easy for translators to understand what is written in the source language, the better translation they would produce for you. So to help you translators, you can create clear guidelines. I already mentioned the terminology glossary. So you can create a glossary on your own and then upload it for your translators, or you can create it on the go. There are applications in Crowdin that can analyze your content and help you translate glossary to see which terms are most frequently used and which ones should be translated consistently. It's also a good idea to create a style guide. For example, you need to explain your translators what kind of content they are translating, whether it's a software for developers, whether it's a medical app for doctors. So they would need to understand who is the audience of the content they are translating. That would help them a lot. They would need whether you want to sound formal or informal. That would also influence translation. So creating a style guide is also a good idea. It's not a must. If you don't have it, you can start translating anyway, but still it's a good idea. It's a good thing to have. And another thing, it's brand-specific requirements. If you have some specific requirements or some terms should not be translated, or you want some content to fit this specific number of symbols because your product UI does not allow it, you also have to specify that before translation starts. And also a good idea would be to hide duplicate content. As I already mentioned, it would save your time, resources, like money, and you would need less translating. Yeah, so now we have prepared our content for translation. Now we need to choose our translation strategy. So the first thing you will need to do is to choose your target languages. How to choose the languages you want to translate into. The first thing you can use your Google Analytics data. You can see from which locations and which languages people mostly speak when they come to your knowledge base. So you can see, for example, if your knowledge base is in English, you can see that German-speaking people come most often to your knowledge base, and probably the same amount as English speaking. Then it would be a good idea to translate your knowledge base into German. So analyzing your Google Analytics data would be a good start for you. The next thing is goal-based approach. You need to understand why are you localizing your content. For example, you want to retain your existing users. In this way, you would need to survey your existing users and see which languages they most often speak and translate into those languages. Another approach would be a market size approach. So you want, for example, you want to reach a new market, then you can start by evaluating the market sizes and see which markets you want to target. For example, you want to target small markets, then you can see which languages they speak, or you want to target the biggest markets, so you can choose some languages like English, Spanish, Chinese, like the languages that are the most frequently spoken around the globe. So there are different ways to choose your target languages. There's no right or wrong. There's just the approach that works for you. The next step would be to choose your translators. So for example, you can hire experts to translate your core articles. You can hire translators and proofreaders that would translate your most important articles, proofread them, and they would and those articles would be ready for publishing. The next idea you can apply is to use machine translation for less critical content and apply post-editing. Post-editing means that translators will review content that is already translated by machine, and they would apply some changes, some slight edits to make sure the content resonates with your audience and it looks, in general, it looks good. For some not critical articles that are like they are not visited frequently, not a lot of people read them, you can just apply machine translation, because as I previously mentioned, knowledge base typically has large amounts of content. So it would be costly to translate all of your content just by using expert translators. So this is where machine translation can help you reduce some costs and save you time. And the next thing, it's important to review your content before publishing it. So you have to check that everything is translated properly. You have your images, your videos, and the content translated, article titles, and things like that. So it's always a good idea to review before publishing. This is a screenshot from Crowdin. I just wanted to show how translators would be able to see articles in Crowdin. They would be able to preview the article. This is the article preview on the left. And then they would be able to translate segment by segment on the right. So on the left side, they see the whole article, not just sentence by sentence. They see the whole article, so they have the general idea, the context, and understand what is it about. And then on the right side, they can translate each sentence by sentence. There's also a comment section that is hidden on this specific screenshot, but if translators have some questions, they can discuss that in the comment section. They can also see machine translation and translation memory suggestions. And you can also see that this word is underlined. This way, Crowdin shows that this word is a term and it has some specific definition and some specific translation. So if a translator were to hover over this segment, they would be able to see how this word should be translated. Also Crowdin helps with translation quality assurance. So for example, if a machine translation or your translation team completed translations, a proofreader can look over them and check if some errors were made. They can change the translations and then they can save them. So a few words about the integration, how it works in general. So for example, you create your articles in Document360, then you select which articles you want to send to Crowdin. They are sent to Crowdin, where you pre-translate them with machine translation or translation memory. You can translate them with your translation team and review them for publishing. Once they are reviewed and are ready to be published, you can send the translated articles to Document360 back. How this sync happens? It can happen automatically. You can select a schedule. It could be synced hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. Or if you need to sync the changes instantly, you can do that manually. That is also an easy thing to do. And also Crowdin always keeps your data secure, so you don't have to worry about uploading your content because you can create private projects. Crowdin is certified, we are GDPR compliant, and there are multiple security features that are also added. And to summarize the general localization workflow for your knowledge base. So the first step would be to choose your target languages and set your goals to make sure why are you localizing your content and how would you like to see the success of this project. The next step would be to prepare your content for localization. So you do not translate your typos into 10 languages. And it's easy for translators to translate your content because it's short and clear. The next step would be to choose your translation strategy and team. You need to understand whether you want to hire freelancers to translate your content, whether you want to have an in-house translation team or choose a vendor, or combine human translations with machine translations. The next step would be to connect your Crowdin localization software with Document360. It's a very simple integration, but more about that a bit later. Once you have connected the two tools, you can set up your localization project in Crowdin. You would need to upload your files, add context, set up workflows. Setting up workflows basically means whether you want to run translation by machine translation, then you want translators to review machine translations into some specific languages. Maybe you want to run machine translation into some languages and then to production. Maybe some languages should be reviewed by proofreaders additionally, so you can set up those workflows in Crowdin. Then you can connect your machine translation tools, so you can use several of them, maybe one for one language, one for different language, or you can just use one machine translation engine for all of the languages. The next step would be to invite human translators because all your project is prepared and set up. Then you would have to translate and review your articles. Once everything is completed and ready, you can send your localized content back to Document360. You can review it and then publish. All the updates are handled really well with this integration, so you won't have to worry what happens if you update already translated articles. You would need to only translate a few additional sentences. You won't have to retranslate the whole article. And if you added a few sentences that were already used somewhere else in your documentation, maybe you can just reuse those translations. And then you can just launch your localized help center, and that's it. Okay, so I will let Silva take over from here.
Thank you, Christina. So Crowdin can actually integrate with a lot of tools, and Document360 is one of them, and we are a knowledge-based provider. So what that means is we help companies set up their software documentation or help centers and things like that. So that's what the Document360 platform is built for. And we offer three kind of knowledge base in terms of access. It can be public, so it can be searchable by anybody in the web, or it can be private. So your knowledge base can be internal to your own company and internal stakeholders, and can be accessed securely through a secure login. Or it can be a little bit of a mixed mode. It can be public, part of your knowledge base can be public and private. So where this localization actually comes in is we actually support close to 50 languages. So you can actually produce content. The key aspect in terms of localization is about custom personalization. So if you are visiting a product documentation from Germany, you really want the documentation to be served in your local language. And that's predominantly what Document360 does. If you have all the settings done in your browser, especially in the Chrome browser, in the Firefox, and what knowledge base Document360 is able to do is able to detect that browser language, and if you have a localized local content written for that particular language, the Document360 will serve you that content instead of your global default content. So which is very important. As Christina mentioned, it is extremely important for the brands to appeal to the customers in their local language, so that they can actually resonate some of those cultural values, especially through language. So it's extremely important. So in terms of integration with Crowdin, it's a very native integration. You can actually go into some of into Document360, and we provide native integration with Crowdin, which means in one click of a button you're just there to get started. So that's how easy is that we built. So our partnership goes a long way back, and I'll just give you a bit of a demo. Quickly create this project. I want to call Portuguese. Okay, and then I'll choose the in-house machine translate engine, create project. And then once you have done that, then the first thing it will ask you to set up an integration. So you click on set up integration, and then you choose Document360, and then it asks you for an API token. So you go into Document360, you go to settings, and then you click on API tokens. And then I already created a token, but having said that, you can go and I've exceeded the limit of the token, but you can actually generate one here. But I already got one, so I'll just copy this and then give it here and then log in. So right now you can actually see that it actually loaded all my knowledge base versions. Okay, the hierarchy in Document360 is, for example, for this project, you can actually see the hierarchy is basically in terms of the versions. Under the version, you have different languages. For example, this is version 1 of your product, or version 2 or version 3, and underneath that you have different languages. So right now you can actually see there is a Portuguese language, but it's not been translated. Let me show you that. So I am in version 1 of my project, and then I'm in English, and these are my articles. Okay, well, let me go into BAM. So this is one of the article in the BAM category, and it has a bunch of things. And if we choose Portuguese, you can actually see a lot of this content hasn't been translated. Okay, I just copied. So there you go. So this is BAM. So again, Document360 flags that this needs translation. Okay, but having said that, I'll show you how to use Crowdin to actually translate this content. Before I do that, so we offer, you go to settings, and you can click on localization and versions, and for each of the versions, as you can actually see, for V1 version, we have like 4 languages added. If you want to add a new language, you can do that. And these are the kind of languages that we support. And you just click on it and then you add. As simple as that. You can actually edit, and then you can also make some languages default ones, and you can also add new languages if you want to. Okay. The moment you add a new language, what Document360 does is it actually, again, based on how you've done your configuration, it either copies from your the main version, or you can actually start it from the scratch as well. Okay, the way this version has been configured is the moment you add a new language, it actually takes your default version. In this case, it's English. So let's go back to the documentation here, and you can actually see I've chosen Portuguese, and I have this content which is in English and it needs translation. Now, having said that, if you go back here, you can actually browse through this in the Crowdin platform. So here I can actually choose BAM, and BAM, I have an article. Let me choose this whole category. Okay, and then you can actually click on this button, sync to Crowdin. So what Documents is trying to do is it's actually putting all the files that you have chosen in a particular language, and then asking to translate. Since this whole project is configured for converting to Portuguese, it's finished. And then once it's done, obviously you choose this and you say sync back to the Document360. Once it's done, yeah, the Azure Documenter, I was able to translate the content from English to Portuguese. That's how easy it is to configure Crowdin with Document360.
Yeah, seems like we showed how the integration works. Also, it might have seemed like there are a lot of steps, but trust me, there are not. There is also a video recorded, so anyone interested would be able to watch it again. And basically, all the setup steps that you showed, you would have to do it only once, and then you just sync the files back and forth. So the setup process, takes you only once.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. But we also have another feature where you can actually integrate Crowdin within an article. So instead of doing it in a very bulk kind of way, if you have done a single article and you want to send it to Crowdin and get back the response, you can also do that as well. And we provide it very natively inside documentation, inside Document360. Yeah, Krishna, coming back to your presentation on some of the strategies you talked about, localization, when do you think, what is the business trigger for an organization when they want to set up a localization? Because usually they start in a global language, sometimes it's English. When is the right time the company should be thinking about setting up localization?
Thank you for this question. So basically, the right time when you should start thinking about localization is as soon as possible. So once you decide to create your product, so for example, if you are translating a mobile app, you have to think about localization beforehand. You don't have to translate the content right away, but you have to make sure that you would be able to localize your content easily, that your software would support it, so you would be able to scale your product easily. You won't have to rewrite the whole code base and change the tool you're using. So for example, if you want to have knowledge base, you can choose Document360. You don't have to translate your articles right away, but you will know that you would be able to translate them when you decide to. You won't have to, for example, if you choose some other knowledge base tool, You can create your knowledge base content there, but then when you decide to localize it, that tool might not support localization. So you would have to transfer all of your content to a tool like Document360. That's definitely time consuming, that's definitely expensive, and it's not something you want to do. So the best time to think about localization is right from the start. So as I mentioned, you don't have to translate the content right away, but you have to make sure your infrastructure supports it and you would be able to scale your efforts. For example, if you already have created your product and it's too late to change the architecture, so the moment you should start thinking about localization is when you start getting a lot of requests from customers speaking different languages. So if you see, for example, if you have a website and you see a lot of traffic from countries where English is not the first language, for example, you can see a lot of traffic from the Asian market or from a European market. So you might start thinking about localizing into their languages. Localization doesn't necessarily mean that you have to translate all your content into 20 languages right away. You can add one language at a time and then scale gradually as you see results from those efforts.
Okay, thank you for that. So look, you've probably been amazed by this ChatGPT, the AI technology, and given it is making a lot of headwaves across different job market, especially for technical writers and especially for the translation providers, the human translators. So based on your experience, what is the importance of humans in the loop for a machine translate to work, and where do you think the technology is going in this way? Do you think the technology will overtake humans in terms of translation content from one language to another?
Yeah, at first, when machine translation appeared on the market, translators were afraid that it would take over their efforts. But years have passed, and translators are still there. So basically, I don't think that AI would replace humans. I think humans that can use AI would replace humans that don't want to embrace new technology. That might sound a bit harsh, but I think it's necessary for all of us to learn how to use the new technology, how to live with it, and how it can help us be better professionals. So, for example, as you mentioned, ChatGPT, we at Crowdin created an integration that ChatGPT that is based on ChatGPT OpenAI's API. For example, translator in the translation editor in Crowdin can talk to the AI assistant and ask it to help with translations, to make the translations shorter, find synonyms, find definitions, suggest translations. So basically, the use cases are numerous, but we are all still figuring out how to implement AI and translation together. So it's an open question that we are all working on, but definitely, if you want to try it, you can try this chatbot in Crowdin and see how it can help you make better translations and work faster.
Yeah, thank you, Christina.
Thank you again and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Selva. Take care. Bye-bye.